Hey everyone, welcome to my channel, Books, Gurrs, and Purrs. My name's Leslie, and for the month of April, I'm focusing on Hanif Abdurraqib, except I picked up this book. I Keep My Exoskeleton to Myself by Marissa Crane. So there's an author I follow. I didn't even know they're an author. On Instagram, they're just lovely. I'm kicking myself because I can't think of their name right off the top of my head. But they put this book on their stories and shared the first paragraph of this book. And it just sounded so good that I couldn't help myself. I picked a copy from my local bookstore and I read this so quickly because it was so good. And I hybrid read this with the audiobook on Libby, which is also really worth a listen. Gosh, before I talk about this book, I'd have to say the best quick reference for this is it reminds me of a bit of a mashup between The Scarlet Letter and maybe The Minority Report. That's the only kind of futuristic example I could think of. Alright, so this is a speculative fiction novel. And so the main character, Chris, is called a shadester. So this is America where the government has sanctioned like a form of like I guess you could say like a shame program, which is why I keep thinking about The Scarlet Letter, because much like the character in the Scarlet Letter, where they have to wear a letter to make their shame known and be ostracized by society. That's what happens in this book, is that when someone commits, let's say, I'll say a crime because it's arbitrary in a way, they will gain an additional shadow to the shadow that people already walk around with in life. And it's not like you blatantly know why a person has a shadow, which adds this element of not knowing why someone walks around carrying the shame. But since it exists, it creates a society where these shadesters are ostracized, and they also have repercussions. For instance, they could lose their jobs. Their food choices are minimal. Healthcare is already bad in America, so then healthcare gets even more restricted. So life just becomes very difficult for shadesters. So in this book, the character Chris has a shadow, and from the very beginning, we learn that the main character Chris, her wife dies, and because she died in childbirth, their child automatically gains a shadow. So in other words, the government decided that it's the baby's fault that the mom died and gave the baby a shadow. And that's just like such a horrific thought to put that on a baby, on an infant baby that was just born. And so that's kind of where it starts. And so this book really explores mourning, shame, found family, also just family dynamics between the kind of like fractured relationship the main character has with her own family versus her wife that passed away, who had a really close relationship with her family. And how do you navigate the society? What does this society look like? And how do you begin again? How do you look internally and find a way to forgive yourself, to move on? And also, how do you let yourself be vulnerable with somebody else? Because you're carrying what society considers a shame, and people are just way more complex and nuanced than just looking at a mistake they made and saying, okay, now you're just like a terrible person, you know? People are just constantly evolving. So I really love this book. I'm glad I read it. It was so worth it because let me tell you something. My life is a little bit crazy professionally. I'm just really busy. And so I always try to restrict how much I read, but I could not help myself. I had to pick up this book. All right, I had to look at my notes for a second because I don't want to forget. Something that the author does well, but at the same time I think I wanted more of, was on page 42. The author brings up the fact that the two main characters, the wife when she was alive, and the main character, we are experiencing the story through Chris, how they're gay and that there's a stigma to their existence in society. But with that, there's a way that they can navigate that. For instance, if they're out holding hands, they could easily not hold hands. And what the author is also trying to bring to that is the fact that these two women have white privilege and how that helps them navigate survival. So I thought that was like a really nuanced conversation about having privilege, but also having like a bigoted stigma against someone for their being themselves, for their sexuality. And I really appreciated that, but I kind of felt like throughout the story I would have liked more of that in a way. The author does mention that things are more difficult for other people that are not white, but I don't really know how. And so it's like sometimes being vague could be a good thing because it'll leave that to imagination. And honestly, I'm not interested in reading about people being brutalized, but I guess because this has to do with world building and an America where a dictatorship has developed and propaganda is used so efficiently to keep this Shadester program going, I think I just needed a little more development in the, I guess, the social structures and how that's affected, and I really didn't get that. So I think that was the only thing, is I enjoyed it, but I wanted more of it, kind of like that. Something else I really enjoyed about this book is how the author captures a child's point of view. Sometimes in writing or in even movies, children don't really get the credit that they deserve. And in this book, I felt like Chris's child that we see grow up over time says things that are so brutally honest from a kid's point of view, like kids do, to the point where it's prophetic. And that's very true of children. They'll sometimes clearly see something and just call it for what it is, and it's really a way to have adults face really difficult topics in society. And when a child is confronting with those things, especially in this book, you can't just turn away or try to act like what's going on is the status quo. But also, how do you explain such a corrupt society to a child, and how it's not easy to make those changes. But yeah, that's all I have to say about the book. I absolutely loved it. I wanted to read a quote, but I was trying to figure out which one to use because it's really beautiful. Alright, I'll just share page 80. And so the character Chris is just grappling with being open about why she has her shadow. And so she says internally, or to the reader, "What I tell myself is that I am too ashamed, but a smaller, quieter part of me knows I am too afraid to give up that shame, to share it with someone who could possibly take a sledgehammer to its surface and release all that broken light." So yeah, I loved it. Pick up a copy, get it from your library. It's worth a read. Thank you for watching, and I'm going to be making some more videos, so you'll see me wear the exact same thing. I promise you I'm not wearing this for weeks on end. This is just me cramming time to make videos. Okay, and I'll talk to you later.